The Underground Railroad, a system used to escape the harsh and brutal life of slavery, began operation towards the end of the 18th century. It was a way for slaves in the South to escape to freedom, even though it was a risky journey. We know the Underground Railroad wasn't an actual railroad, but it used similar terms as a real railroad. For example, there were stations, station masters, and conductors. Conductors were a very important part of the Underground Railroad. Their job was to go south and help guide escaping slaves to freedom. There were many techniques used. A common method, though, was for a conductor to disguise himself as a slave trader, buy the slave, and then guide the slave to the north. Harriet Tubman is the most famous conductor of the Underground Railroad. She made more than 19 trips south, which resulted in freeing more than 300 slaves, some of which included her own family. At one point, her capture was worth more than $40,000. She was a very brave woman and would stop at nothing to help gain freedom for herself and others. William Still, a conductor as well, was another important individual involved in the Underground Railroad. For every slave he helped, he interviewed them. He recorded a brief biography of them that included their destination and an alias they had taken on. The abolitionists in the North were another very important part in making a journey to freedom successful. They used their homes as stations. The stations provided food, money, and clothing to the escapees. Stations were usually set up between 10 to 20 miles apart. The traveling from one station to another took place at night. By seeing a candle in a window of a home, that signaled a safe station for slaves to go to. However, if caught, the abolitionist as well as the slave received severe punishment. Many slave owners in the South despised the idea of their slave or slaves gaining freedom and being treated as an equal. Like in today's world, racism still exists. Thanks to the efforts of those who helped in operating the Underground Railroad, freedom was made a reality to those who thought it would never come. There are people in the world today that are brave enough and care enough about others and their rights to risk their lives for what is right.
I honor those good men and women for their noble daring, and applaud them for willingly subjecting themselves to bloody persecution by openly avowing their participation in the escape of slaves. Frederick Douglass.